My name is David Yezzi, and I'll be reading a monologue called More Things in Heaven about a young man who meets a very unusual stranger through a very unusual living situation that he's found himself in. More Things in Heaven. When you've seen something alone, just you have a choice to keep it to yourself or tell someone and keep on telling it until they see it's true. Spoiler, they won't. That's what you get for saying what you saw. And look, I'm not a fool. Can we be clear? I didn't buy a word the guy was saying, though he believed it. Oh, hell yeah, he did. The way he hung on every word, just like a bird dog holds a pigeon, firm but living. Dead pigeons, those we also got. Well, one. I winged it with the blind man's BB gun. It's a mystery that I actually hit the thing. I'll get to that. But first, I meet the blind man. His name is Carl, and Carl, he was my landlord. I had a bedroom upstairs in his house. Carl was famous on the avenue. Everybody in the neighborhood knew Carl, the tellers and the pizza guys. Carl did Bikram yoga down the block and used a worn-out rope to walk his dog, a collie he named Daisy. Daisy Dog. The house, when I first got there, was a shambles, a broken porch and yellowed paper shades drawn down to the sills, which made it look like maybe no one lived there. On the walk, a metal front gate squealed and then fell off. I sort of propped it up since no one saw. The thing I most remember when we met was the fine, translucent parchment of his lids, stretched tight across the hollows of his eyes. I came around the corner of the house, and Carl was standing there holding his rifle. He turned and sputtered out, "Hello, who's there?" He raised the gun and fired it in the rafters. 3 pigeons flew out from the timbered eaves. "Damn rats with wings," Carl said, and turned to me. "Where are you?" "Here," I said, and touched his arm. The smoke had cleared out from the night before, from cars first doused with gas, then set on fire. I lived with him a year. Some nights I'd find dog shit on the rug when I came home. Carl just let it sit there for a week. I'd hold my breath and scramble up the stairs until the smell receded in the frozen air. I had a cup, I had a radio that worked, I had an ancient heater that glowed orange as it grew hot. It pinged and groaned. I had a chair, a desk, and a TV, which didn't work, but that was fine. The smell wore off after a minute or two. Strange what one gets used to, really anything. From the windows I could see downtown turn red and purple in the evening light. Everything was far away and quiet. Carl was smart. He was also nuts. I thought at first he might be paranoid. His friend was off his meds, Carl liked to say. A psycho, dangerous. He loved to tell it. Tom was CIA, ex-CIA. He'd worked for the company, Carl said, and did I know what that meant? And I said I did. Tom wore a t-shirt and white painter's pants. He helped Carl around the place repairing ironwork and railings, missing floorboards, broken screens. One day in fall, I found the two of them talking on the porch. Carl was all excited for me to meet Tom, and I shook his hand. Massive, calloused, flecked in white house paint. Tom was barrel-chested with thick arms and wore thick black-rimmed glasses like the ones that poets used to wear after the war. Carl's smiling, goading Tom to tell his story. Tom just sits there looking at his feet 1,000 miles away, snapping his gum. So Carl can't help himself. He starts right in. He tells me Tom was flown into Uganda on a diplomatic mission. Him as muscle. He was military. Tom was. "He knows how to kill you with his bare hands," Carl says, laughing. "The airport's in Entebbe, Lake Victoria, the size of a whole country to the south. He gets there to the compound, and there's wire and chain link everywhere. They let him in, and he starts walking down the path of fences. They go into the courtyard, and then blam! Amin himself shoots Tom's friend in the head, and then the lights go out, but they don't kill him. They beat him up so bad that he can't walk. When he wakes up, he's lying in the dirt, but in a place he doesn't recognize. Right, Tom? Tom says nothing, towing a nail. They'd flown him to Kinshasa and left him there in an abandoned military post. Not a soul around to hear him call for help. He crawls across the dirt, across the road, toward a hut with a set of wooden stairs. He can see brown rusted metal. He can see barbed wire and the sky. Blue, not a cloud. He crawls until it's afternoon, then night. His hands are tied. It hurts to stand. He reaches up and turns a knob between his swollen hands. The door is locked. He blacks out on the steps. When Tom wakes up, a stewardess is asking if he's comfortable and did he want another blanket. He's lying in bed on a plane back to Andrews, and she's there to make sure he has everything he needs. Everything, if you know what I mean. When he gets back to Langley, Jimmy Carter arranges to meet him. Carter says sorry for all that Tom has been through. He says that if he wants to, he can kill Amin. And when the time comes, Tom heads off to Jeddah and goes to visit Amin in the hospital where the Saudis were keeping him by then. Amin was sleeping. He never woke up. Carl got quiet then and shook his head and smiled. Tom looked at me without his eyes. He was crying. Sometimes I get a current in my fingers, like an electric charge that's running through me. It comes on me at night. I sit awake, hunched in the darkness as it's pressing down. When something dies, the part that slips away is that cathodic charge beneath the skin. Carl handed me the gun when I first met him. With Daisy whimpering, bright-eyed in a corner, I fired in the rafters at the birds, not even aiming. One flopped on the ground, propped up on one wing, straining and then still. Truth is, I lied. I did aim, best I could, surprised at hitting what I'd actually meant to. You think that you could never do a thing, and then you do. I don't remember blood, or barely, like a jewel. A voice got louder. I handed back the gun. Carl loaded it before we went inside. Tom, I never saw but that one time.